Hi, good evening, everyone. Is it audible to everyone? Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Yes. Before understanding today's concepts, let's try to recollect it what we were understanding yesterday. Yeah, we started discussing about the VPC. Yes, this is private networks. If you'd like to define it, yeah, in our AWS account. Why do we need that private networks is to manage it about our AWS resources with a secured way to providing that accessing permissions point of view or a group of yes like devices placing into that in different subnets point of view, yes, which we can use it that the VPC. This is, we can say, that virtual private cloud. But what are the main component that is going to helping this is, yes, 2 points always remember that. One is public access to that EC2 instances. That is anyone is accessing from that outside. How you are allowing that to access that resource from outside or through the internet. That is one point. Second point is, yes, if you have the resources within the private subnet, that is a private network area, then how you are going to provide that access privileges to the users who are trying to access it from outside, or how do we get it internet to the EC2 instances which are launched in that subnets, or databases which are going to use it in the private networks. But for those databases, how do we get it internet? Yeah, all these points whenever we consider about it, yes, the VPC and VPC with all the components which we should know it. But what are the VPC? What is a VPC and what are the different VPC components are available is, if you just conclude it yesterday's the statements. First of all, we need to have it all the external communication to enter into that about our virtual private cloud. That is, gateway is required. It is kind of the modem, which is supporting that to accept external request to that, the internal. Yes, that is the modem will say that in the normal home networks. But in the VPC, what do we say that? Gateway. That is internet gateway. Yes, internet gateway is required. And through the internet gateway, what are all the requests which are coming to that EC2 instances? We need to route into that particular subnet. Yes, maybe he is going to try to access the resources to that application which are running in these EC2 instances, or maybe it is required to route the request to that another subnet. Yeah, how do we route it? The request coming from the external through the gateway to the subnets is, that is, a routing table is another important component of the VPC, which helps about it to route the request to that particular subnet. But before entering into the subnet, which we can define this the firewalls, it is kind of security evaluation or security rules execution. But what is the kind of resource or component that is available from the VPC before entering into that subnets to perform all the firewalls is, that is NACL, Network Access Control List. And once NACL has been evaluated all the rules, and if it is okay, then it will be entering into the subnet, and within the subnet particular EC2 instance, the request will be routed. Yeah, the main components, if we just try to understand that, the VPC, gateway, so external to that internal communication, internet gateway. This is a public access point of view, and then routing table, routing to the particular subnet, and NACL, it is kind of the firewall before entering into that subnets. And then once we enter into that particular subnet, yes, EC2 instance or like particular database. Yeah, subnets which can be launched in the public wise or private wise. But whenever we are planning that these subnets, we use it defining this in the different availability zones. Yeah, because I mean in one availability zone if you have defined set of resources, as we know that like if this availability zone got failed, then how to get it the high availability? Yes, we need to have that in the different availability zones about these subnets. But what is the subnet? That is a group of there's like resources which are managing that. That is about number of what devices point of view, number of yes IP addresses point of view. Yeah, we can define the subnet. But subnet, whenever we are defining, we don't have that option. Is it a public or the private? But subnets on the base of the gateways, we can say that the public or the private. This will come back. I mean, don't worry about that. But main components, just remember that internet gateway is required, then routing table, then NACLs, then subnets. But subnets we can define in two approaches. One is public and second one is private. But how to define the public and private? That will come back. Yeah, that's about some important components. And another concept which we are trying to understand, the CIDR also. The classless inter-domain, the registry. I mean routing, sorry. Classless inter-domain routing. So as we know that it is the two parts. One is IP address, the base IP address, and second one is subnet mask. Subnet mask is going to play very, very important role. So how many IP addresses that we can have it in that subnet? Yeah, so on the base of the requirement, we need to use this CIDR subnet mask. And these are all some important subnet CIDRs we are trying to understand it. /32, that is same IP address. /24, that is 256 IP addresses. /16, that is 256 into 256. /8, that is 256 into 256 into 256. So 3 octets that is going to have it. And /0 is nothing but all IP addresses. Yeah, so there are all things that we are trying to understand it. And we are understanding the default VPC also. We were going through that, the default VPC. Yes, all new accounts have a default VPC. And what are the new instances which are launching? All that instances that are launched in that VPC, if no subnet has been specified. And the default VPC is having that internet connectivity, and all instances are going to have the public IP address. So we also get a public and a private DNS names. That's also which we were the understanding in the class yesterday. So are you clear about that? Before going to work with the practically of this VPC? Okay, fine, good, yeah. Now let's move into that. The first creating that's the VPC. So how do we create a VPC? Or CIDR. Actually, it was discussed yesterday's one. Okay, so let me go through that quickly. Yeah, so do you see the screen?
Yep.
Suppose if we define this 10.0.0.0 / So this is normal, that's IP address, which we can say that. Some base IP address. But whenever we see this IP address, then what we can understand it, or or how the networks are going to understand is, so the network cannot understand that which octets for the network and which octets for the IP addresses. So it is going to use the subnet mask notation. Suppose let's talk at the subnet mask notation, which we have this is /24. So then we're on the network. So how it is going to understand this is, so as a 24 representation, this is which we can say the classless inter-domain routing approach point of view. What this 24 meaning is, so 32 minus 24. So what is the value we are going to have it? That is 8. Then 2 power of this 8. So what are the result we are getting there? So after subtracting from the 32 of the CIDR, then 2 power of that. So that is, what is the 2 power 8? That is a 256. Yeah, now we can understand it. So from this network, not only we, like a network, how it is going to understand this is. Okay, so from this 10.0.0.0 series, so this like 256 IP addresses that will be allowed. But 256 IP addresses, so which octet is going to change? Suppose this octet, first octet, how many we can have it? 0 to 255, right? In the IP addresses range. So each octet, what is the range which will be having this is 0 to 255. Dot 0 to 255. Dot 0 to 255. So each octet, that's we can have it 256 IP addresses. So from this 256, from this 256, from this 256, from this 256. That means 256 into 256 into 256 into 256. Those many number of the IP addresses that we can have it overall from the IP address. So this representation normally, that is, how do we define this representation? All IP addresses, that is 0. So what is, whenever we define the 0, 0, 0, 0 slash 0 is nothing but either 0 to 255, any one of this one, or 0 to 255, 0 to 255, 0 to 255. So here you can use it, those many number of devices from this one. But if I use it 10.0.0.0/24, what is the meaning of it? As we're talking about it, 32 minus 24, that is 8, 2 power 8, 256. 256 is nothing but, we can get it 0 to 255, there is a 256, right? That means the first 3 octets, it is going to use it for the network identification, network, and the last octet, it is going to use it for devices. That is which starts from the 0 and up to that 255. That means what is the sequence it is going to have the IP addresses point of view? So first IP address is this one, second IP address is 1, third IP address is 2, like that up to 255. That's we can have it that. Are you clear about this? So first 3 octets, it is going to use it for the network, and last octet, it is going to use it for the IP address. So these are notations. /24, if I give that, so we will be getting that 3 octets for that network, and last octet is for device. Suppose if I use it 10.0.0.0 slash something 27, then what is the meaning of that one? So 32 minus 27, that is a 5. then 2 power 5. 2 power 5 is nothing but so 32, right? So 32 number of devices that we can have it. But which octet it is going to change it? Last octet it is going to changing. Obviously, like this is the 256 less than that. So the 256 less than that whenever we have. So last octet is for that devices and remaining 3 octets for IP addresses. That is a network octet it is going to use it. And this is going to use it for the device identification. So we can have it in this subnet mask, total 32 IP addresses. Like that, suppose we are planning about it as we are talking about it. So the web layer, so web application to host it, we need to have some 15 IP addresses required. And application layer to host it, we need to have the something 25 IP addresses required. And database to set up that database layers point of view, some 10 IP addresses required. So then how do you plan it about that? So total of how many IP addresses required? Around 50 IP addresses required. So 50 IP addresses to get it, you need to plan it one total, the VPC. Total VPC. How many in that VPC, how many devices we are planning that? 50 devices we are planning that. 50 IP addresses. Device is nothing but one IP address. The 50 IP addresses that is required. And that 50, again, we need to divide into web application and app layer and the database layer. We need to divide again it into that. Then how do you go for, suppose 50 round figure, that is 2 power, what we have, this is 64 we have. That is a 2 power 6, that's we can have it. 2 power 6. This is the total number of devices. Within that, like entire VPC, web application, how many we need it? 15. Okay, 15 your planning is nothing but just go for 16, which we have that is a 2 power the 4. The total, the CIDR, I mean the total devices 64 required. And within that the VPC, web application, how many IP addresses? Around 16. And application layer, again, I mean you can use it the 32. Which comes under that's 2 power the 5. And the database layer, again that is required 10 approximately, like you can go for the 16 and then 2 power 4. So total how many? 16 32 plus 32 64, total 64. So the first you need to have it for about your application, what are the layers that is required, how many subnets that is required. Yes, web layer to launch it, one separate subnet. App layer to launch it, separate one more subnet. Databases to install it, we use it the separate subnets. And each subnet we will allocate it how many number of devices that is required. Suppose here we are planning to launch it somewhere around 12 or 14 that IP EC2 engine. That means 14 IP addresses required. So app layer or database layer, like that, on the base of the requirement, which we go for that, identifying the CIDRs. But these are all the subnets. All these subnets, we are going to create it within the VPC. So as a overall, all the subnets, how many IP addresses that is required, that's we will define this in the VPC. VPC is kind of total area of the flat, as we were talking this yesterday. And that flat we are going to divide it into small the subnets, the small rooms of it. Now what is the CIDR for it? That is a 2 power 6 in the CIDR notation. What is the CIDR? So 32 minus 6. We are expecting about it. 32, I mean, that is a 2 power 6, right? I mean, 32 minus a 6. That is the 26 which comes under. So if I use the CIDR / 26, then we will be getting about it 64 IP addresses for it. But IP addresses, yes, which IP address, that's what you want to use it. As yesterday, we are understanding about it. Private IP addresses, which we use it to 10 series, or 172.16 series, or we use it. What is that one more series? 192.168 series. Yes, which one do you want to use it? That's we can define it over here. Okay, from this series, I need to have it. The slash CIDR is 26. That means 32 minus 26, that is a 6. 2 power 6, 32 IP addresses, I will get it here. Okay, this is about overall VPC CIDR. VPC CIDR. But what about that subnet? Again, you need to create it. These are 3 subnets, right? Subnet for web servers. Another subnet for app layers. Another subnet for database layers. Then what is the CIDR we are going to use it? Yeah, from this VPC, okay, this is a VPC CIDR. Then we can divide it into subsections. So 16 IP addresses that is required is nothing but 4. What is the value we need to define the CIDR here? Anyone can ping that? What is the CIDR that is required here? Yeah, that is 28. 32 minus 4. Whatever the value we are getting this, that is 28. What is the CIDR that is for that app layer subnets? That is 27. Like that's this for another like here the same thing which we can use it 28. Yeah, now if you combine all these, so one VPC is the total area of the flat. How many, what is the like number of square feet that is required? That is number of devices requirement point of view. We define the VPC CIDR. From that VPC CIDR, so what are the like rooms that is required? One subnet is just think like as one room where you are going to place it about all the AWS resources. Yeah, that is web application subnets or app layers, a separate subnet, and databases into the separate networks. We will use it. We don't define all the resources in the same subnet. So for that point of view, though we go for that, again, that VPC will be divided into small units. Or if you need that, this kind of the clarity, yesterday I was giving that IP addressing guide that .com site, which is going to helpful to get it more clarity on this IP addressing mechanism. So IP addressing guide. Yeah, if you use it to this site, which is going to helpful. Yeah, if you have this any specific CIDR notation, suppose if I enter that 28. So what is the 28 now? How many IP addresses that we can have it? Total, we will get it 16. And what is the subnet mask for it? This is a subnet mask. And what is the starting IP address? This is a starting IP address. What is the ending IP address? This is the last ending IP address. Suppose as we are talking about the CIDR point of view, we need to have something 64, then 26. If I use the 26, yeah, the total 64, we are getting that. So this is the starting IP and this is the ending IP, and this is a subnet mask of it. Internally, it is going to use it, and the CIDR notation is this one. Now if I give that 10.0.0.0/26, so what is the starting IP address and ending IP address? Let me define it in our file. Starting IP address is 0 and ending IP address is 63. So this is the total number of devices that we are going to have it. That means it is going to start from first IP address 0, second IP address 1, 2, 3, 4 like that up to 63. We can use it in this CIDR. Next one is 28. This is for the subnet web application. Then, so if you use it like 28, as we're talking about it, 16 IP addresses required. Okay, this is starting from the 0 and ending like 0.15. So these many IP addresses that we can have it from this subnet. And next we are giving that 27. Let me give that 27. Then already we are using the 0 to 15 for the first subnet, right? Then we need to change it here. So starting IP address is this one with like which we can say from the 16 if you say that. Yeah, so CIDR range, which is starting here. That's first IP address is 0010.0.0.0. But last octet only changing that. Instead of doing that, okay. So instead of doing this, let's go for, let me change it to 1.0. Then in this series, so 31 or 32 devices, that's we can have it. So which subnet are you going to use it? But from the CIDR, we need to plan it that. I will show this while creating VPCs. VPC will take it about and will define it, which will be allowed, which won't be allowed. Now this is not allowed in this series. Why it is not? Because this is the 10.0.1 series. So network IP address is changing that, right? 3 octets. So only last device which we are expecting about it, 0 to 26. If you have this kind of the range, then you can use it this series. Suppose I need to get it IP addresses from the 16 to how many? 32 we need to have it, right? That is a 48. Then we can use it this notation to get it about, yes, what is the CIDR I need to use it? These 3 CIDRs I need to use it that. So /28, this is which is going to give that around 16, and this is around 16, and this is one IP address which are going to have it. That means 16 to 48, that's where we are going to get it. Next to 48 to again 16 IP address that is required. Then 48 to, sorry, not 48, 49 to, if we use it something 61, already 0 which has been used, or 062. Then CIDRs for it. Yeah, these are all the CIDR that are supporting that for these range of IP addresses. So 49, 50, the 31, And then you will get it here the 2 IP addresses, and here the 4 IP addresses, and here also 4 IP addresses, and here 2 IP addresses, and here 1 IP address. Total around 16 IP addresses. I understand the point. I mean, that is CIDR usage.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, while talking about the VPC, we are going to define it, which are all the values will be allowed or not allowed. But if you have the requirement of that number of devices, that's number of devices, how do we, I mean, what is the CIDR that has to be used? Yes, like you can just use it, this CIDR notation. Suppose if you're expecting about it something like 200 IP addresses, but not exactly the 200. 200 nearest to the 2 power, which we use it, and we go for this defining, that is /24. Or if you need that 500, okay, 512 is the nearest one. 512 to get it about that, what is the nearest one? That is a 23. If I have used about it, then how many devices I will get it? I will get it 512 devices. Is what is the CIDR notation for it? That is /23. Or if you need that 4000 IP addresses, then as per the 2 power, which one is the nearest one? That's we use it, and we define that as a CIDR for it. Is it clear about this? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, if you don't know that concept, I mean, there is no meaning of that VPCs and subnets understanding. Okay, now let's move into that. So how do we create a VPC with CIDR? And then how do we create a subnet? And then how do we define the gateways and with routing tables and NACLs? Yes, they're all one by one. We'll come back. Yeah, virtual private cloud. You can have multiple VPCs in a region. Yes, in one region, we can create multiple VPCs. We can create it, but maximum in that region, 5 we can create it. That is a soft limit. That means in one region, 5 VPCs we can create it. But if it is required the more, then we can request it and we can get more as well. But default maximum VPCs, we can create it in the region 5. And in each VPC, maximum how many CIDRs we can define this is, that is again the 5. I will show that. What is the the CIDRs in VPC is. So why do we need to go for the more than one CIDR in one VPC? As we're talking, that's in that VPC, one CIDR which we discussed. But why do we need to go for the more than one CIDR? CIDRs defining in one VPC. Yeah, so here we have the limit. What is the minimum size? If you're creating that any VPCs in nothing but what is the minimum number of devices that you need to define it is? That is /28. If you define the /29, it doesn't accept it. That means the minimum size of the VPC CIDR is 28. That is, you are going to get it 16 IP addresses at least. Any subnet or any VPC you are creating is nothing but 16 IP addresses you need to plan it. You need to take it. But maximum how many I can take it? 65,536 devices in one VPC we can get it into that. In one VPC CIDR. That means I can use it. The maximum CIDR is /16. Suppose if I have given that VPC CIDR with the /15, it doesn't accept it. That means in one VPC CIDR, that means that like total number of devices in one VPC maximum, we can create it 65,536 devices, that is IP addresses. But suppose for about your application, there is a requirement 1 lakh IP addresses that is required. in that VPC. Normally, we don't see that kind of large networks. But okay, the requirement is 1 lakh. That means you cannot use the VPC, right? VPC is supporting the maximum how many? 65,536. But in that VPC, you are planning about it total 1 lakh IP addresses to take it, but it doesn't support it. Then we can go for one more CIDR, you can create it in the same VPC. That means one more CIDR if I define it, 65,536. One CIDR 65,000 and another CIDR 65,000. Then how many will be having? Approximately 1,30,000 devices. That's why it is supporting about it. That's point of view. In one VPC, we can create multiple CIDRs. Why do we need to go for the multiple CIDRs? One CIDR maximum you can have it 65,536 IP addresses only we can get it. But if you need that more than that, then create one more CIDR in the same VPC on the basis of number of devices or IP addresses that's required. Yeah, as this limitation point of view, in that VPC, we can go for the creating maximum 5 CIDRs. Yeah, so another point is VPC is a private. As we know that yesterday we are trying to understand about it, VPC private subnets, which we can use it. Only the private IP ranges are allowed, 10 series are allowed, or 172.16 to 172.31 is allowed, which is supporting this one is /8. This is for the big networks, we use it normally. And /12, AWS by default is creating the default VPC with this series. And another one is home networks point of view, as we are talking that 168 series. Yeah, allowed the IP ranges, these IP ranges which are supporting private IP ranges. As we know that remaining all the IP ranges are public. 10 series, 172.16 to 172.31 series or 192.168 to this series only will be allowed for the private IP addresses. Yeah, so now let's go for that. How to create a VPC in the AWS account? Yes, I mean, this is also region scope. VPC creation is also the region scope. Where is about? Yeah, so this is about our AWS account. Let me try to refresh this. Yeah, we are using Mumbai region. Let me go to the Mumbai region. Let's access the VPC. Already we are observing this yesterday, the default VPC. Yeah, for each region, we are going to have this one default, the VPC. Yeah, so this is a default VPC, which is already available. And what is the CIDR which has been defined for this VPC? 172.31.0.0/16. That means 65,536 devices we can have it in this VPC CIDR. And is it the default one or not? How do you know it? Yes, the default VPC which has been set that as yes. Yes, this is the default VPC. That means normal what all the EC2 instances which are launching, that is creating in this VPC. but we need to have it about our own VPC. Now let's go for the creating about our custom VPC. Yeah, create VPC. Yes, what are the resources that you are planning to create it? Yes, VPC only. Then we'll come back other resources later. But for the time, let's go for the VPC only. And VPC name is, this is RNS VPC. Some name of that. And yes, IPv4 CIDR. Yes, manual input. Yes, we are going to define that about our own CIDR. That's okay. Let me define it. 10.0.0./24. That means total, or let me give that /16. So total how many IP addresses we can have it is 65,536. But we are we need to divide this one into that subnets. This is a total area, total number of devices. Or if you need that only 24 is nothing but last octet is for device and the remaining 3 octets for network. But let me go for I need to use it to show that it's different CIDR notations for the subnets. I'm going to use it /16. That means last 2 octets for devices we can use it, and first 2 octets for network identity. Okay, so this is CIDR which are using for about our VPC. And IPv6 is it required for it? Yes, if it is required, you can enable that IPv6, or we don't need that, just skip it. And a tenancy, even in the EC2 also we are observing the tenancy concept. Do you want to use the default tenancy that is shareable, or do you want to dedicated one? So if you have any dedicated hosts in our EC2 instances, we can use it the dedicated tenancy, or otherwise go for the default, that is sharing. The shareable. So there's a VPC, what are the networks which is going to creating that devices network interfaces which are shareable. But this is about our private one. What are the CIDR we are using? So this CIDR which will be allowed only for us. But all these devices, it is going to take it from the shareable resources. That is the meaning of this, instead of the dedicated one. Yeah, so VPC creation, so straightforward, give the name and what is the CIDR, that is number of devices, that's how many you are expecting in this VPC. As per the CIDR has to be defined. And then a tenancy model default under tags, yes, name of this VPC as a RNS VPC, that's fine. Let's create VPC. Yeah, now observe that the properties, but here we don't have much properties to discuss. Yes, this is a VPC ID which has been created. Tenancy, and is it a default VPC or not the one? This is not the default. And state is available. And DHCP options it is using. This is DHCP option sets. This is a set which is using default one, but we will customize it. Some options will come back. And this is a CIDR we have defined. And Route 53 we didn't define anything. And who has created owner, and IPv6 we didn't enable this. And by default, any VPC we are creating is nothing but it is created with one routing table. Routing table, as we are talking that this is the main router, right? Router to route the request to the particular subnet. Yeah, the default one routing table is provided by this VPC, but we are going to use it about our own routing tables. We'll come back. And DNS host names, it is not enabled by default. And resolution, yes, DNS resolution is enabled. That means we can use the DNS names to access the systems. But host names are not enabled. DNS host names are not enabled, but DNS resolution is enabled. What is the difference? We'll come back later. And ACL also, network ACL also has been configured. That is inbound and outbound rules, networking level. That is a network ACL. That is also one ACL has been created. Yeah, one routing table, one ACL, which has been created in this VPC. But do you have any subnets? No, we didn't create any subnets so far. And it is having one default routing table. And as we are talking about it, how many CIDRs we can create it in one VPC? How many CIDRs we can create it in one VPC? Yeah, we can create it total 5. So here we have created 1. But still, can I go ahead and can I go ahead adding there some more CIDRs? Yes, we can add it that. But if you have those less than 65,536, yes, this is enough. Suppose let me go for adding that other CIDRs or editing these CIDRs. Yes, you can see that here, edit CIDRs. Yeah, this one which I have created while creating that the VPC, but you can add it more CIDRs to the VPC. Yeah, IPv4, suppose 10.0.0.0. Suppose slash 15 if I give that. Is it going to supporting that? Slash 15. Is it going to supporting? Yeah, that is. No, it doesn't support it. Suppose if I try to save this one also, so it is invalid. Invalid CIDR. Okay, slash 15 is not supporting. Suppose if I go for defining slash 16, is it going to accepting that? Let me clean up this. It is not prompting for the save option. Let me cancel this. Okay, if I use it to slash 16, is it going to accepting it or? So if I try to save this one, it is not accepting. Why? Already we had defined with the same CDR notation, right? CDR range conflicts with 10.0.0.0/16 with association ID VPC CDR. Already we had defined. It doesn't allow that. Okay. Then if I need it like some more 65,536 IP addresses. Okay, I would like to use this one. But what I need to change it here? Still, let me close this one. Yeah, what I need to change it this in the CIDR. I need that 65,536 more, but with a different CIDR. One CIDR already we have defined 10.0.0.0. Now, which octet I can change it to get it 65,536? Which octet do we need to change it? Second one or third one? Okay, second, third, yes. Second, which we need to change it. Third one, if I change it, suppose if I'm going to define something 10.0.1.0/16, that means this series already getting used, right? If I try to creating that, yes, you are overriding that existing one. Yeah, from the right to 3, yes, that is correct. Yeah. So if I use it, third octet, like, I mean, it is already getting used by this one. So 00, these two octets which will be used for that device, last two octets. First two octets for the network. Now we need to change that network ID, not the device ID. If I change it 1, okay, now before that 10.0 in that network 65,536 devices. Now 10.1 again we are going to get it 65,536 devices. So it is cache is not accepting. Let me cancel this and let me go for recreating this. Okay. Now if I use it 10.1, is it going to accepting? Yes. You see there's one more which I have created. That means I can use it at 10.0 with one series, 65,536 devices, and with the 10.1, another 65,536 devices. Like that, how many we can add it, these CIDRs? In one VPC? So maximum is supporting that, the 5. Let me try to add it, whether it is supporting it or not. Let me check it. 5, it is not accepting. So it is met its maximum number of allowed CIDRs. So how many it is allowing that in one VPC? Maximum 5 CIDRs it is allowing that. Are you clear about this one? The VPC, within that VPC, why we have the 5 CIDRs concept. Now here I can use it, this CIDR 65,536 devices to launch it. Another CIDR, that means 65 plus 65,000 plus 65K plus 65K. Those many devices you can plan it in this VPC. More enough, more enough. That is a big networks which we use it. Yeah, that is about the CIDR, but we need that one enough. Yeah, this is a default one. I'm going to use it. Let's close this. Yeah, that's about VPC creation and defining that CIDRs within that VPC. Is it clear about this, the VPC creation? Yeah, now with this VPC we have created. Next we need to go for that. Launching the resources point of view. That is web applications or app server applications or databases. Databases mostly which we use it in the private subnets. And web applications, yeah, the front end, yes, some public subnets which you can use it. Now application required within this VPC, 2 subnets. One as a public, second one is a private. Public is nothing but anyone can enter into this. So all the public requests, user has to access nothing but it has to be allowed. First of all, his request to enter into the network. That is a public subnet. But private subnets, no. We don't allow that external users are accessing this private area. This is a restricted one. Okay, how do we define it now? The public subnets and the private subnets within this VPC. Let me go ahead and creating that subnets in that VPC. Subnet creation is nothing but you are going to allocate it the number of IP addresses that is required in that subnet. Yes, number of devices that is required. We are going to define the CIDR. Okay, let's go for and observe that. Now, next option after once the VPC has been created, VPC is total, yes, area of the flat. Now we need that the rooms within that flat. That is subnet. Yeah, by default, as yesterday which you are observing that default VPC has been given that 3 default subnets, and they're all the available IP addresses from the each subnet. And each subnet, whenever you are defining, you need to define the availability zone as well as. Yeah, let's go for the creating a subnet about our custom requirement. Yes, in which VPC does do you want to create subnet? So this is about our VPC, RNS VPC, which is on the CIDR, this one. Now subnet. Yes, what is the subnet that would like to create it? I would like to create public subnet. That is a name of the subnet. Yes, I'm just identification point of view. I'm just giving as a public subnet. And in which availability zone does do you want to launch it? That. Yes, as the region point of view, this region is have the 3 availability zones, 1A, 1B, 1C. Yes, in which availability zone does do you want to create this subnet? Yes, I would like to go for the 1A. And now, yes, from this VPC CIDR, how many IP addresses that is required for this subnet? That means how many number of EC2 instances or RDS instances. That's the number of IP addresses, how many it is required in this subnet. As per that, we need to define the CIDR. Suppose I'm going to define from this series. This is about our, you need to use it, this network ID, 10.0. This is about our network. And 00 is about our devices. From that last 2 octets, how many devices that you can plan into that. Suppose I need to have the 256 IP addresses. Then what we can do that 256, what is the CIDR? 24. Minimum you need to use it, 28, right? Minimum 16 IP addresses, you need to take it in the subnet. VPC CIDR anyway. So now what is the meaning of this one? Now from this VPC, which is having the 10.0, the 65,536, I'm going to take it 256 IP addresses to this subnet. We are going to allocate it 256 IP addresses to this subnet. That means slash 24 is nothing but last octet will be IP address. And the remaining 3 are subnet. Now the subnet, what is the subnetwork ID? Yeah, network ID is 10.0, 0 is a subnet, and 0 is for the device ID. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to that 255 it is going to have it. Okay, so this is the public subnet, and we would like to create in 1A and with this IP CIDR, and let's create a subnet. But as a high availability point of view, are you going to create it only one subnet, only one public subnet, or 2 or more required? So as this diagram, if we just observe that, so public subnets in the different availability zones also we need to create it. Now we have created public subnet only in one availability zone. But if you need that instances with the high availability, yes, you need to have it one more subnet also for the public in the different availability zone. The devices which are launching here, this is in the different availability zone. Yeah, some EC2 instances in the auto scaling group, yes, we'll run it in one subnet and some EC2 instances in another availability zone. But availability zone is nothing but indirectly subnet. Yeah, the public subnets also as a number of availability zones which are planning that you need to create a number of subnets. Let me create one more also, the subnet. One more public subnet itself, we are going to create it. But this is 1B. I'm going to use it in 1B availability zone. Yeah, 1B availability zone. And what is the CIDR? 10.0 minimum, you need to use it. That is a VPC CIDR network ID. You need to be in that network. 10.0 minimum. But now I can go for last 2 octets from the VPC is devices. Yes, now you can take it. 1.0/24. What is the meaning of this one? 10.0.0.0, that is a public subnet 1A which is using from this CCA VPC, and 10.0.1.0, I'm going to use it to this subnet for this, this range of IP addresses for this public subnet 1B. So 256 devices in that subnet and 250 devices in this second subnet. Okay, so let's go for create the subnet. Yeah, like on the basis of availability zones which are planning, we go for creating a subnets, public subnets, private subnets. But we just created public. Let me go for creating 2 more. Now, whenever we create the subnet, just understand one more point. Yes, this is a CIDR we have used 10.0.0/24 and 10.0.1.0/24. How many IP addresses we are going to get it? 251. This is in 1A and this is in 1B. Why this 251? Why not 256? As yesterday we are understanding that from each subnet, 5 IP addresses that is going to use it by AWS internally. Yes, AWS is going to use it internally, those 5 IP addresses. Yeah, so now we are going to have this only 251. That means whenever you are planning this area, suppose if you need that something like 40 devices, you need to plan it 40 plus 5. That is a 45 devices point of view subnet you need to design it. Yeah, the 5 that is getting used by AWS internally from each subnet. Okay, now we have created public subnets in 2 different availability zones with the 2 different CIDRs. Let me go for the creating 2 more in the same VPC. This is for the private. This is 1A, which availability zone. So you are choosing the subnet is nothing but indirectly you are launching that EC2 instance in particular data center. That is the meaning of the subnet. And from this subnet, what are the CIDR you have defined? Okay, let me define 10.0.00 we have used already, 1.0 we have used already, 2.0 I would like to use it for this. That means in the private subnet, we are going to use it 10.0, or you can change it something like I would like to use it instead of this series 16 also. Yes, which will be allowed because whatever VPC is supporting that. Okay, 16 and 17, let me use it for this private. Okay, this is one more subnet for the private as we are going to use it. And let me create like that. One more private subnet in 1B in the different availability zone. This is 1B and with the CIDR 10.0, that must be VPC ID, right? 10.0, we cannot change it. But the remaining last octets on the base of about our current requirement point of view, we can change it. Suppose I would like to use it 17 series from this 256 devices for this subnet. Okay, we have created VPC. Within that VPC, 4 subnets. Now, if you go to that about your VPC and the resource map, now we have created in AP South 1A, in this availability zone, 1 public subnet, 1 private subnet. In AP South 1B, 1 public subnet, another private subnet. But for the timing, these are all mapped with this default routing table. But we are going to use it about our custom routing table. We will come back. Routing tables are going to play important role as we are talking this diagram point of view. Yeah, routing tables are going to play important role. Yeah, what about this routing table and internet gateways? That's we will talk it tomorrow. Today we understand that creating VPC with the CIDR. CIDRs are the very important. And then using that CIDR, defining in the two availability zones, the two public subnets and two private subnets. But tomorrow, which we'll talk about it. But just giving that the name that is a public or the private, we don't see this any difference, right? Just giving the names, I mean, we are identifying with the names. But the properties are the same for the public and private which are given. So that is a tomorrow, whenever we are talking about this routing table with the gateways, we will get that understanding public subnets, which gateway we use it, and for the private subnets, which gateway we use it, routing from the routing table. That is going to helping that more understanding in the public and private subnets. Don't miss that tomorrow class. Yeah, so that's all from my side for today. So creating the VPC, the CIDR's notation understanding, and with this, subnets creation within the VPC in a different availability zones. But how do we differentiate it, or how do we go for that? This one as a public and this one as a private. That's we'll talk it tomorrow. Routing tables with the gateways, that is going to help in that. Is it clear? Yeah, cloud we are learning is nothing but one of the important concept is networks. The VPCs and VPC component subnets, gateways, routing tables, CIDR notations, NACL, already which we discussed the security group, one kind of the firewall before entering into the EC2. And NACL, another kind of the firewall before entering into subnets. Yeah, those things we'll see tomorrow. I'm going to close it. Yes, any queries, please let me know. If we're going to wind up today, I'm going to delete this VPC. Anyway, we'll create it quickly tomorrow. So how do we delete is, yes, select that the VPC. In the actions, you can see delete VPC. Yes, in this VPC, these 4 subnets also, it is going to deleting. Yes, confirm that. Yeah, we are good. There's no VPC. This is the default VPC. Each region is going to have the default VPC. The overall, always observe that dashboard. That will be helpful. If you miss it any something like the resources deletion, just keep on verify that at a dashboard level. Yeah, that's all from my side for today. I'm going to log off and we'll meet tomorrow sharply the same 6:35 round of it. We'll log in it a regular time. But today just because of some other meeting where I was not able to join. Yeah. So thank you. We'll continue tomorrow.